Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us for our fifth webinar in this series. Welcome again to all the participants who've been part of our webinar series in the past. And for those of you who are joining us for the first time, welcome, and we hope you'll be part of our journey as we move forward. To begin with a few housekeeping pointers, would request everyone to keep your videos and microphones. And for any comments or questions that you may have, we would request you to use the chat feature that you will find on the taskbar to keep track of any questions or to share your own questions to the presenters. For those of you who are joining us for the first time, a quick introduction to Myrtha Pools. Myrtha Pools, founded in 1961, has close to 60 years of global experience, where we've built swimming pools across 70 countries. We have 270 direct employees and 5 subsidiaries. The subsidiary in India was set up last year and has been, this is in the context of already a set of projects executed. We have 400 representatives, and the biggest point is that we build 1,500 swimming pools a year, of which 300 are large size facilities. A quick introduction to the team at Myrtha Pools India. Mr. Jaishankar Arunachalam is the national sales head based out of Bangalore. Mr. Saif Nadeem heads the sales for North. And I am Hakimuddin Habibullah, the Managing Director for India and South Asia, and also an Olympian swimmer. For those of you who may have either missed a session, any of our previous webinars, this is just a quick reference of some of the webinars that we've done prior to this. And if any of you are interested in knowing more about these, get in touch and we'll be happy to share with you a recorded version of these webinars. For today's presentation, I would like to welcome Ram from Urban Frame, which is a Space Matrix Group company. Ram leads a business vertical focused on design for educational campuses, cultural buildings, and public spaces. 2 years back, they established a vertical focusing on designing sports infrastructure. We thank you, Ram, for participating in this or leading this particular webinar. Ram has been also the key person involved in designing the Padukone Dravid Center for Sports Excellence, which he will present and talk more about in this webinar. As our special guests today, we are also privileged and honored to be joined by Mr. Nihar Amin, who was the first Dronacharya awardee for swimming. For those who may not be aware, the Dronacharya Award is the highest award in India or in Indian sport for a coach. And Nihar is also the managing director of Dolphin Aquatics, which is India's top swim team, and is based at the Padukone Dravid Center for Sports Excellence. Thank you, Nihar sir, for joining this session as well. I would request Ram, if you could take this forward.
Thank you, Hakim. Thank you, Nihar, for joining us. I'll just start sharing the screens with you guys. I hope the screen is visible, Hakim?
Yes.
Yes,
Yes,
okay.
Ram.
Okay, so I'll just begin. Let me just begin with a brief introduction of my company. So I come from a business vertical called Urban Frame, which is largely a part of the Space Matrix Group. What you see on the top is the Space Matrix Group holding. We have three distinct verticals, business verticals, Space Matrix, Workplace, which actually focuses on corporate interiors, and then we have Blink, which actually focuses only on hospitality design, and Urban Frame is an architecture and master planning practice. We are in India. We are headquartered out of Bangalore, and our global headquarters is actually in Singapore. It's a very much an Indian company, but actually it's spread across Asia Pacific region. I'll just take you through some of these snapshots of different range of works that we do. Of course, cultural projects in public spaces have been coming up in the last 5 to 7 years. A lot of focus on design aspirations are actually taking off. So this has been actually one stream which I'm particularly involved. Master planning of universities, townships, real estate, office buildings, and then actually hospitality has been something that will actually continue to do well. The baby is sports design, and it's also actually one of the fastest growing business for us. It came in as a surprise when we actually saw the speed of the growth. Currently, we are actually doing projects across 15 locations in India, and it actually talks about what is the potential or the need for sports design in the country. The High Performance Center, I mean, the swimming pool is part of an integrated complex. It's Padkon Dravid Center for Sports Excellence. This is very much towards the north of Bangalore, closer to the airport. It is actually a private development that makes it very different. We could actually have a different way of approaching things. It was not funded by the government. It was also one of the first integrated sports center. Typically in India, you would see a center for excellence for either a single sport like cricket, hockey, or a football, things like that. But the vision of the promoters was actually to have an integrated sports center where excellence can be promoted by actually interdisciplinary learnings. There are a lot of gives and takes that can happen, and it's a holistic facility that actually caters to excellence for every sport. So what do we have? We have cricket, we have football, we have tennis, we have aquatic center, basketball, 100-meter track. It's not actually, it's part of a amenity, I would say. The last two 100-meter track and the fire side are more of recreational things that can happen. And then badminton, squash, shooting, that actually we put it up recently. And the cricket nets, I mean, this actually came in as a must requirement as an addition to the overall setup of the cricket. What was more important is actually what you see in the last box. These actually are very integral to actually making this center for excellence. We have 3 fitness centers, a full-fledged physiotherapy and rehabilitation center, spaces for coaches. This is something, they are like the teachers of our institutions. And in most of the sports centers, they are missed out. We also actually, a programmatic theme wise, we actually said it's in India, sports achievements of Indian sports is celebrated on TV, but there is not a thing which actually celebrates as a museum. It's a small to big achievement. So we actually put up a Hall of Fame, and then retail largely catering to sports with respect to either clothing, equipment, and then club, which is a part of the revenue model, and then F&B, which is actually is a must. I think we have 2 or 3 outlets on F&B. Just to give an overview, I'll actually go through this slide a little faster since we have enough to discuss specifically on the Aquatic Center. What we have here is, this is the main approach road that actually happens, and we have a football field which actually just fits into the profile of the land. We have 2 large play fields on 2 extreme ends. and then a combination of indoor and outdoor functions that actually happen. A lot of things actually, sometimes some of facilities when you're doing an integrated complex where there is no precedence, a lot of things actually evolved. The design was not cast in stone. A lot of things we had to improvise as we were actually moving forward. Sometimes during the construction, sometimes there would be a state of where certain stakeholders would require certain changes. So we actually had to come up with the open framework where we could be in a position to receive inputs. And I think that is what actually helped us in actually making this product good and being open to inputs at any stage. I will move further from the slide to focus now on purely the aquatic center. Where, like every other, each of this sport, we actually began with understanding the user and then accordingly derive the program and then identify the system. I think typically an aquatic center cannot be just a rectangular box of 50 by 25. There's more to it. I think the heart of this aquatic center is understanding who are the kind of users, what are their aspirations, who are the users finally. For us, when we started the design process, we started with the stakeholders. This is where we actually, I think we spent quite a bit of time with Nihar. We had multiple discussions. We actually explored multiple scenarios where what are the kind of athletes that we have. And in my discussions, I think one of the key things is that the athletes and the parents actually figured out a lot. I think Nihar can actually put it in his own words about what were his thoughts when we were discussing in the beginning. Nihar, would you like to jump in now?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me on, Hakeem and Ram. Yeah. So see, this is probably the first of its kind project where the design brief, because I had met Mr. Vivek Kumar, who's the owner of the project, and he approached me and said that he wanted to have a world-class facility, a multi-sport world-class facility, and there were a number of issues. With whatever I had seen, and I've been involved in swimming for many, many years and pools for many, many years, I think over 90% of all the Olympic size, full Olympic size, 50 meter by 25 meter pools, about more than 80 to 90% of them are, a very old design, which doesn't have overflow gutters, which has, terrible turbulence in the pool, extremely poor quality of filtration, very outdated, extremely outdated. And to put something, we had to put something special, something that has never been done before, and something that is absolutely world class. So, that was what we had discussed, and then I met Ram, and then we just moved on from there. And I had some pretty unique things that are required. It's just like Ram said earlier. It's just not a matter of digging a hole in the ground and filling it with water and just a few buildings around. There are very specific in a competition pool, in a pool that is used for training elite athletes, which could possibly, other than training elite athletes, be used for competitions as well, for national and international competitions as well. So there are a lot of requirements, the position of the changing rooms, the number of WCs available, the number of showers available, the dimensions of the pool deck. There were a lot of issues about how much area is required on the pool deck, because for a 50-meter pool there has to be adequate, at least a minimum of 10 meters on each side. And of course, there are always space constraints, especially when there are a lot of other buildings that have to come up and a lot of other sports that have to come up as well. So there were a lot of issues that are required. And as far as I was concerned, I have seen the quality of the construction in most of these things, and they were extremely with whatever I have seen, extremely poor quality. The quality of the laying of tiles, the grouting, within a year's time, I've seen some of the best people, tiles coming off the bottom of the floor from the floor and having big issues about, tiles being put back later. And it was a big, really a big issue. And I'm extremely happy that Mr. Vivek Kumar and Ram were all ears when I suggested Myrtha, because I have, been observing these world-class pools for many, many years in my travels abroad to the various world championships and the Olympic Games and so on and so forth. And this was a great solution for us because one of the main issues was time. We did not have 2 years plus to have a regular concrete pool put in. And it was extremely quick. The way Myrtha worked, and once we got on board with them, this was amazing. I have never seen the level of professionalism and the quality of the workmanship that they have put in. I have never seen this anywhere. So this was a learning experience for me as well. So yeah, that was really my design brief. That this is what we had several meetings over. In addition to that, there are rooms that are required, for managing competitions, which have a good full view of the 50 meters, where the timing systems have to be installed and run. There are a number of issues. The quality of the starting blocks. This is important. There are hardly 1 or 2 pools in India which have the latest starting blocks, which are required for competitive swimming. This is really, really important, and they have to be very high quality. So these are the things that we discussed in great detail. And I think for the most part, the quality of the Myrtha pools, the quickness of the work that they did, the professionalism, it made a huge difference to us. And I think Ram can back me up on this. If there's anything else, that you'd like me to add, it's something that I might have forgot. It was like close to 2 years ago.
I think I recollect one specific point, specifically when it comes to the passive users, the parents part of it, where you have very, very categorically said, I don't want them on my pool deck.
Yeah, that's pretty clear. So we have a dedicated gallery for them, and make sure, access control is very, very important. Then the flow of, entrance, how people are going on, the safety of the whole thing. There are a number of small issues that are required. Exactly, at what point, exactly where the position of the balancing tank, the position of the filtration plant, where the water is going to be done, where the heating system is going to come in. These are the really, really important points that are required. So, yeah, that's pretty much it.
So I'll move forward. This is where I think a lot of discussion happened. I think we spent quite a bit of time understanding the requirements, move back and forth. And finally, actually, we came up with deriving the functional components specifically for the aquatic center. We actually discussed 2 pools, actually. One is an Olympic pool. The other one was a smaller training pool with lower depth and smaller dimension. There's a back and forth on how much of deck space that we could provide. Finally, we could actually settle down at 5 meters as long as we were meeting all the requirements of deck storage and things like that. Change room, I will specifically come to that. First aid in the coach office, which Nihar was actually mentioning about, these need to be accessible from the pool deck. The equipment store, the filtration tank, the balancing tank, adequately spaced, rightly located, easily accessible. And then the seating gallery and a lot of other things were actually shared as a part of the integrated complex. Locating the pool, I think this is where when we were doing the overall master plan, we were doing a lot of design for each specific sport, what are the deriving the functions. But when we were putting up the master plan together, there are a few key criteria. The entire philosophy of this center was that what you see as the 2 orange boxes there, these are the 2 anchor points of the campus. One is a Hall of Fame, the other one is a smaller Hall of Fame, which is towards the cricket side. And the path linking these 2 Hall of Fames, we actually came up with an idea of making it a Walk of Fame. It's an external pathway and completely pedestrian. And every sport on the facility would actually be accessible from this Walk of Fame. So that set us one simple line where we could actually say, okay, this is what is going to happen. The second point was also that swimming is in its own totality, it actually caters to a lot of other sports as well, because it is not just about it caters to fitness, stamina, muscle toning, and it caters to every athlete who's either pursuing either football, cricket, or anybody. So it's more or less or literally in the heart of the center. Of course, the terrain and where we could actually locate the plant room, the balancing system, all these were actually key factors for us to locate it. And that came into the heart of our center. I think I'll just go back here. I mean, one of the notions that typically comes to my mind before I was actually getting into this was typically otherwise swimming pool complexes are always in the corner. I've noticed this either in universities or residential blocks. They're compounded off. For some reason, it is secluded. It's not visible. You'll have to go finding where is the swimming pool block. So we actually did away with that notion. And we also didn't want to, of course, the space was tight, but we also didn't want it to be like a compounded jail. What we see normally in the municipal pools, you have high compound walls all around, completely locked down, you don't know where to enter kind of a things. So what we did is that one is what you see, the darker box if you can, is the indoor pool, and then the larger outdoor roller pool. We actually set it side by side, adjacent actually, and then actually built the design, the built mass around it in a U shape. It by itself actually it would house certain parts of functional components of the swimming pool and certain parts of the leisure activities. What you see on the southern side, we actually intentionally left it open because it's about a flow of space and also about sight line. I have a walk of fame which is actually moving left to right, and that particular screen was actually visible. I mean, people who are not even coming to actually train for sports, other athletes, younger athletes who's actually probably training in football and is walking across, he or she can look into what's actually happening in the aquatic center. I think learning from each other was one thing, and making it visible was required as a part of this learning process. I will take you through a little bit more details on this, specifically with respect to the volumetric things that actually happen around. So this is across the shorter direction. The first one, the top one, that's the 25-meter length that you see. So what we have is a lot of galleries actually on the first floor. We pushed it up. They get a better sight line into the pool. And then not having a built component opposite to the gallery mattered a lot, because view from the gallery is also important. You are actually having a lot of people will carry impressions from how they actually look at the pool. So setting that visual was very, very important. So intentionally, there's no built form put opposite to the galleries. And then we actually took the landform further with respect to the amphitheater and the landscape, so that the extended green can be a continuation of this, the blue pool that would happen. And it's also very important. It also actually worked well for us with respect to the handling the terrain as well. We could balance out the cut and fill well. If you look at the section on the lower part, the buildings are largely G+2. That's the east and the west that happens. I get quite a bit of obstruction with respect to the direct sunlight, late evenings, early mornings. That's when the training is at its peak. It's very rare that, especially on the outdoor pool, if I'm not wrong, I think during the peak daytime, training is avoided. It's usually mornings and then the evenings. So that is why the number of floors on the east and west also actually matters. And luckily, again, we actually could decide the shallow end of the pool based on the terrain. So what you would see on the left-hand side, we actually got a natural gradient, and that was an automatic choice for us saying that what's a shallow end, what's a deep end. It was actually just now things were just setting in place with respect to locating it, getting into the depths of the pool, the adjacency, the volumetric expressions, the framework is built at this stage. And then actually what happens is next is that typically, I mean, a lot of us architects, designers, or our experience of pools when we have used it in a hotel or something is that you actually get into the pool straight away. And change rooms are actually ancillary spaces. But in this kind of a scenario, your change room is the lobby. You are actually entering into the change room first. That changes the way you actually get into the swimming pool. Your arrival point becomes a change room. So the way we will look at the change room needs to be quite different. I'm not saying that it needs to be like a 5-star or anything, but of course it's a matter of choice. But the circulation is completely different. Here, what we did was based on the user requirements, we actually came up with 3 sets of change rooms. The yellow box is largely catering to the outdoor pool. The slightly reddish brown box caters to the indoor pool. That is also categorized as a user-friendly for the smaller age group, because we have varying age groups here and also different levels of training that happening from beginner to professional training. And then we have the light green box on the lower side that caters to more of a fitness enthusiast. So 3 distinct change rooms all happening around the pool. But we still wanted to maintain that visual link between the indoor pool and the outdoor pool. So that remains unobstructed. What you see as a cross mark as a box, that's where we actually located our filtration plant, our balancing tanks in the lower level. So it would actually, it's a single space for both the indoor as well as the outdoor pool. The blank box that you see, that happened to be the club. So the club actually derives visual aesthetics. It's a borrowed landscape. So that becomes the eastern side of the enclosure. But it's very important to understand that circulation works very, very differently. And visitors or parents largely will not be allowed to get into the deck. And we actually put up staircases on 2 extremes where you see the green arrow. Those become the circulation for the parents to move up straight into the gallery. The bright blue arrows that you see, those are the service access. I think this is something that's very, very important in terms of operations and maintenance, which usually we as designers sometimes don't understand the intensity of maintenance that goes into the pool. I mean, the number of man-hours spent on maintenance every day is quite a bit. And making that person go all around is actually doing a bad job. I mean, we will actually end up having a bad maintenance if we don't keep that person happy as well. We did some small innovations of understanding and also by Neha's experience of having seen things across the country. One thing that you will see specifically is that you'll see less of doors. Doors, especially in the swimming pool change rooms, are actually overrated. I mean, of course, the mindset issues are there, but if actually designed well in terms of movement, cutting off the sight lines, I think it is very much possible to cut the amount of doors. It's not about cost saving, but it is about how convenient it is for a user and how clear the circulation can be, so that you actually have to put it literally in a sequence saying that you just have to enter the change room. You can't get into the pool straight away. You need to get into the wet area and then get into the poolside shower. This becomes very, very important. And for privacy things, we can always get in screens. It is best
and since this is already operation for almost 2 years, it works very well. It works very well. Always keep the doors only for locking up the space. So our big doors are only at the main entry that's at the top there, and then for the WCs. These are the only doors that we have in the change room. It works very well. I've seen it personally. Things happening around in this place. And it's always when you're actually looking at a large number of people, as a philosophy across the sports centers, we try to avoid lockable spaces as much as possible. That was just as a safety thing for us because we have different age groups across different sports. And that was the philosophy which we actually took it across all change rooms for all sports. What else actually can we look at? I think Nihar actually mentioned it very clearly, what happens on the deck space. I will try to put it in words, but I have seen it happening over a period of time, been there, looked at things. A lot of things actually happens on the deck space. It's usually used for training. I mean, the athletes do need to do some warm-up exercises. They need to have run laps across the pool. That's a part of the training module. So adequate space around the pool is for the user himself to keep running around. The second is if you're actually looking at hosting an event, it needs to cater to all the accessories or the smaller programs that will actually come in at a later stage, specifically for the events. One thing that actually differentiates significantly with respect to your leisure pool and the competition pool is the way we light the decks. We've seen beautiful images of hotels, vanishing pool. The water is lit brighter than the deck. But I think here it's actually equally important to light the deck up very well. We actually put in a lot of effort of how to place it, less obstruction, and things like that. Finally, we actually narrowed down to almost 150 to 200 lux of light level on the deck space. That actually improves the utilization rates of the pool as well. Disabled access is another thing which is actually, now it's been mandatory, but people do think, oh, swimming pool ke liye chahiye kya? Do you really need one for the swimming pool? Yes, it is. I mean, I think every sport today is inclusive. I think we shouldn't be deterring anybody in terms of actually trying to pursue sports. I think it's a good thing to have. First aid room is a must. It needs to be accessible closer to the user. And especially when we're talking about a competition pool which can transform into catering to a larger user base, emergency exits are very, very important to identify very clearly in the design stage itself. It can't be an event-based system. It has to come in from day one, the emergency systems. There's a lot of storage also required. And when I say storage, it needs to be easily accessible from the pool. The kind of maintenance regimen the pool takes up with respect to cleaning, number of hours that they clean, the type of equipments that they use, the lane ropes. I mean, I'll show you some of the images later. I mean, when it's actually laid out straight, it looks, oh, it's laid out. But it's not that it's always in the pool. When you bunch it up, roll it up, it takes tremendous amount of space on the deck. There are a lot of these smaller things, but very important things which needs to be addressed right at the designing stage. It doesn't work in terms of modifying at a later stage, especially when you have this, if you get the stakeholder right in the beginning, then actually things get streamlined to getting a better product. I'll get specifics to the indoor pool. I think this, I'll have to give 100% credit to Nihar, where he actually changed the game for us. Typically, what you see is that in any pool, the shallow and the deep end is actually the gradient is in the longer axis. But in our case, it's actually more or less, it's actually flat. We actually did the gradient on the shorter side. It's a 10 meter by 20 meter pool. So the reasoning is that
if I were to actually do, I'll go back to the plan here to explain. So in a typical word, if you guys can see my cursor, typically you would actually see the gradient going down this way or this way. We did it this way, right? The idea was that in terms of training, people would begin at the shallow end. Now, it was important for us to increase the length available for the shallow end. Thereby, actually, you can actually host many more athletes. So this would give me, if I were to do it, the gradient along the longer length, I would get almost 10 meters of shallow end. But by simply changing the way direction, we are able to double that to 20 meters. So that actually worked very well. I think this was all inputs from Nihar on this, and I think operations wise, it's working very, very well. A 20-meter length of a shallow end is actually quite new. I've never seen a pool being done this way. But I think this is what happens when designers work closely with the stakeholders. I mean, we were always in constant dialogue with Nihar right from day one until it's handed over, and we still continue to talk even when it's running. I think this is what will actually keep bringing in innovations, new thinkings that we can do. Just to give you an idea of the visuals of this, this was something which we worked on in terms of a few parameters of cutting down, bringing in, maximizing daylight into the pool. We intentionally raised the volume to handle the acoustics and the noise level. We didn't want it 100% exposed. So top covering is always there, but on the sides, one end of it is actually open. We didn't put glass on the other side. It would otherwise lead to complications of bringing in, managing the humidity levels indoor. This is a heated pool, both are heated pool by the way. So managing the humidity and things like that. So on one hand, we had actually had it enclosed. On the other end, we actually kept it locked down. I think this why one end being locked down is also very important because it's on the outskirts of the city. And one of the biggest fears that a user has is actually when the wind blows, it's quite chilling. Even when you're walking around, it's quite cold. So it is not about actually ventilation as such as that you let the breeze blow across. It is definitely not the idea. So we had to block wind from one direction, but at the same time get enough daylight, expose it on one side to manage the humidity, and then the volumes to actually handle the sound and the acoustics part of it. I will move on to the main pool, that is the 50 meter by 25 meter pool. Well, when we say 50 by 25, that is the water surface. There is more to it that needs to be considered when we are talking about a 50 by 25 meter pool. Nihar in his earlier, just a few minutes back, did mention the importance of the starter block. Well, that starter block is outside the 50 by 25 meter. And that is what actually needs to be taken into consideration when we design the pool, the deck space around it. So typically, it's always on both ends. The starter blocks you would see in some of the pools of municipal pools. I've rarely seen starter blocks being installed on both ends, but typically it's done on one end. But since it's a competition pool, we had it on both the ends. That typically can take up around 2 to 2.5 feet away from further from an additional 750 mm on either ends. And then the two edges that actually happen beyond that on the longer side are your gutter systems, your pool systems that will actually come in. So these, even though it doesn't take space, but when we are actually talking about precision, when we are talking about the race or the competition being measured in a matter of milliseconds, I think precisions with respect to design thinking always have to be taken into account. We are talking about winning or losing a medal in a matter of milliseconds. So I think the thinking of giving importance to precision has to happen at the design level, and that the athlete takes forward. The athlete benefits the best out of the precision. In terms of the profile, that is the depths, we had actually had a sloping thing. What you have see on the shallow end is 1.35 and the deeper end is 2 meters. The first 15 meters is actually inclined, and then it's actually completely flat. This is a standard feature which actually happens in most of the pools. It works well even from training. This is works both for training as well as competition. Before I move on to the next slide where we will get into the system, what you see, what I would like to highlight is now the getting into the construction part of the pool. It's a hybrid system where the system is actually a combination of RCC as well as stainless steel. Why the system? I mean, I'm now doing multiple sports centers, and I keep talking to different promoters of sports centers and stakeholders. One of the common questions that come across is, why do we need to do this, right? I mean, why can't we do? We've been doing swimming pools the same way for ages, and we still continue to do it. I will give you an analogy of what is a system and compare it to another system that we use regularly. Right? In an elevator, there is an element of civil work that's involved. That is our RCC shear wall that actually happens. But the rest of all the movement, your equipment, your cars, that is a system. I think it's time that we actually look at saying that this integration is a must when we actually move into the swimming pool, the way we construct, the way we understand pool. Imagine trying to do a lift elevator system where you have a separate electrical guy who will come and actually install lights, a carpenter and say, I will do the interior paneling, and so on. That is not going to work. I mean, it has worked in swimming pool for a very, very long time, but there is always better way of doing things. As we move forward, I think we should move towards the best things. So what is the system? Let me first put you across what actually happens in a very simple nutshell. Right? The base is always going to be an RCC. In this case, I mean, I'm sure Myrtha has other systems as well, where if you want to lift it up and take it away, then even the base can be made into a stainless steel pool. Here we had no intention of moving the pool at any stage. So it's going to be a permanent location. So the base, we did decide to make it as a completely RCC systems. We have a toe wall, which actually is in a profile. I'll go back quickly to the previous slide, which I had highlighted. What you see in yellow, that is the RCC part of it. That is the one which actually goes in a profile. That's the bottom part of the pool, upon which we have the stainless steel pool, actually the systems installed. It's a beautiful system. I was actually pleasantly surprised that finally we have a well-engineered, well-thought of system with respect to the construction part of it. Otherwise, we've dealt with enough issues during the construction of the RCC, the traditional pools, right? I mean, waterproofing is not going right, tile jumps are not right. Somebody is scared, saying that if there's a leakage in the thing, you don't know, you either blame the waterproofing guy or you either blame the civil work guy. This goes on and on. But it's not about the blame game. It's about once done, get it done and don't touch it again, right? So it's a very beautiful system where we have the RCC system.
actually set in place, after which you have the stainless steel panel, which is actually, and it has its own buttress system for support. These are bolted into the RCC pedestal. What you see here is a slight bit of toe end that actually happens. And this works well when it comes to training. This is a kind of a toe hold along the edges of the swimming pool. This works very well. It need not be, but it's based on a user's preference whether you want to flush it or. But we chose that we wanted that toe hold that would actually happen. Another thing that we did want to look at in terms of operations and maintenance, there is a lot of piping that happens all around the pool. I mean, the number of pipes that are laid, there's certain electrical cabling as well, which needs to happen. And these are the ones which actually finally also determine the operations and your ability to upgrade pools. Tomorrow technology is going to come in, you can actually do a lot of things. So we went in for a trench system where you have stainless steel panel, which is actually holding the water. And then we actually built another set of RC wall here to create a trench for holding the pipes and all the electrical works that can happen so that any maintenance work can happen very easily without having to dig up earth or demolishing or even obstructing training. You open the panel, get down in and do your work, the training continues, nothing stopping. This is, I think, works well for us. It's an option. Some people do without the trenches, but for us, it was a must. The section on the right side is with respect to the startup logs. Typically, you won't see this popping up in most of the places, in most of the leisure pool. But this is where the deck takes a profile. It's a 150 mm rise that needs to happen. And then the equipment is placed bolted on the top. So there are these small things which needs to be taken into account. And I will move to the next slide where it's actually even gets more interesting. I mean, I've had experiences of putting up the pools earlier, largely leisure, where you have multiple components being put in after the civil work, trying to fit in drill karo, sir, wo ek yahan pe lagana hai, finishing karte waqt you have round light fixtures, and then the tiling guy is trying to fit things around. Well, this is an integrated system, right? We have the drain systems done, the inlet, the vacuum point for cleaning, the accessorization that is in terms of the pole anchors and the floating rope anchors, all these are actually built in. It is a single system. All these panels actually take this built in. There is nothing called as doing this in parts. You build, put up these panels, these come up with all these components that are required. It's engineered very well and it's all done. I'll just go back to one important thing which I missed is this surface, the inner surface here. I mean, my personal experience has been that tiling, I would try to avoid it the best. There have been other methods of actually going in for membrane, but there have been issues in some of the pools that we have seen. It cracks up and it's heated and things like that. Here, one is, it's actually a PVC laminate. And these are actually again sealed, again with the liquid PVC. So everything turns into a single homogeneous surface as a liner on the inside. And I was so used to seeing the bottom surface being blue, blue, blue. But this was actually when it was built, when we'll see the time-lapse video, we'll see it was white, pristine white. And it felt good to see that jointless, seamless surface on the inside. It gave me great confidence saying that, oh man, the tank is completely sealed. There's nothing that can go wrong there. That was a brilliant thing. And the way these panels are also assembled is that there are no welding that happens. There is none of these welding components. It's all bolted, and actually each of these panels are actually joined again by PVC, liquid PVC systems. This is what we were talking about, right? I mean, we were talking about the pool, the deck, what happens around. So what you see here, which is actually rolled up, these are the floating ropes, which actually are put up on the top of the pool. Depending on the training, this will be retained as a lane, or it can be roped up. When these are actually pulled out of the pool and actually coiled up into one of these rollers, those take a lot of space. Training methods completely dependent on coach, whether he wants 50% pool to be in that direction, 50% uses in this direction. That's a complete thing. A lot of movement actually happens around. What you see are these spots of blue. These are the starter blocks. And the enclosure that I was mentioning in the beginning, we have 3 sides enclosure that happens here. And that is the side which is actually towards the amphitheater and moving down into the landscape. The gallery is all along the longer side, so that they get the complete view of start to finish of the race. This is a pool on a normal day. I mean, when we actually look at any training day or kind of a thing, this is what actually happens. It's all set in place, quiet, until people get in. But during our discussions with Nihar right in the beginning, his aspirations for this aquatic center was much bigger, of having the ability to transform this place into hosting an event, of a significant event. It's not like a weekend competition or anything like that. When we're talking about competitions pools, I think we should take into account that it is going to host a significant event down the line. What can happen is that now suddenly we are actually in need for additional spectator space. We had built-in galleries which were set in on a day-to-day basis. This would work well for a parent or a casual visitor who would come in. So this would work very well, and I think the deck space was managed very well, even though we would have liked to have more. But I think considering how we handled the change rooms and the ancillary functions around the pool, that worked well here to host an event. Right in the beginning, we always discussed about, in case of having an event, what would we do? This is what we did. This is where we actually put up the temporary pavilions on the other side of the pool. This is more towards the landscape. So events, transformational possibilities is a must. This is something that I think we have addressed for every sport. And why I'm talking about this is, until this happened, I was not confident of how it's going to be. Because it is always on paper. We would always say that, oh, you can host. We would always tell you, ho jayega kind of a thing, right? And finally, the recent event was actually a validation of how thorough we were with respect to thinking every aspect of making this center, right from ability to transform to scale, competition, training every day, addressing all users, parents are happy, athletes are happy, and more importantly for me, the coach is happy. So I want to run through a quick a time-lapse video. I'll just put it on screen for you.
So just to give context, what you would have seen initially was the base work that was done, this base civil work, on which now the Myrtha panels are being installed. So for this particular pool, we had just a little bit of tiles on the top end from an aesthetic and to support the maintenance. So after the structure was put up, now you have the waterproofing layers coming in of the special PVC membrane. Like you'll notice, there are no tiles. The lane lines are painted with a special PVC paint. and this is the installation. So this pool has the best lane ropes, starting blocks, with the backstroke ledges, the special wall inlets, recessed ladders. Thank you, Ram. So moving on, the question, the next part, I'd like to invite Coach Nihar Amin to come in and share his perspective, because we heard one part where he coordinated with the architect, which is a very crucial element at the design phase. And then subsequently, the coach or the program has to take the ownership of running the program subsequently and maintaining the facility. So I would request if Mr. Nihar Amin can come in and share his experience after taking ownership of the pool. It's now over 2 years since the pool is in operation. And so, Niasa, if you can come in and share your thoughts.
Yeah, so basically, as far as I'm concerned, this is a dream come true. This is quite simply the best designed pool in the country. It is built to exacting world-class standards. One of the great things which I saw is they were actually the Myrtha people, when they were installing it, they were actually using lasers to ensure that the length was exactly 50 meters, with virtually, 0 point, I don't know exactly the fraction, but this is quite frankly the most precisely built pool in the country, because the tolerances are exactly specific. I think Hakeem or Ram can give you the exact tolerances, but I know for a fact that when I record a time, when a swimmer's time, or if I'm running a program, I know exactly to the microfraction exactly what these swimmers have done. There are many Olympic-sized pools in this country which are built not to tolerances which are even maybe a meter shorter, or maybe even up to a meter longer, quite frankly, and so anywhere in between that. So because of the close proximity that I've had with the design team and Myrtha pools, this is literally a dream come true for me. The position of the changing rooms, the gallery, the view from the gallery, the coach's cabin, the head coach's cabin, the manager's cabin, where he has full access to see the whole facility at any point in time. When he's when he's sitting down in his office, he can view the whole facility, check the quality of the water, see who's in the pool, whether any safety issues that are required. It is extremely easy to do, and also the fact, some of the things that have been supplied along, because everybody keeps saying lane ropes. These are not lane ropes. This is a misconception. These are anti-wave lanes. These the waves, the lanes that have been supplied to us by Myrtha actually eliminate waves from one lane to the other lane, which allows flat water. And what is required for racing or for training of an elite athlete is flat water. And the wave control in this pool is far superior to anything I've seen anywhere. And the quality of the lanes is simply excellent. So it's really, really easy for me to run my program, whether it's widthwise or whether it's where I can go short course 25 meters or I can go long course. It's absolutely brilliant. And in terms of maintenance, it's extremely easy for us to maintain the water quality. The disinfection is very quick because of the vents on the side. In fact, I think just in a couple of hours, I can be very sure that my chlorine levels are end to end exactly at between 1 and 2 ppm. So my pool is absolutely safe for all the swimmers, especially in this time that we're actually waiting for pools to open. I am 100% sure that my pool is safe for anybody who wants to swim in it, and the pool is perfectly sanitized. So in terms of the technology, like I said earlier, the starting blocks are world class. The pool is built with very exacting tolerances. The wave control is brilliant. The filtration system is working perfectly well. So we're very happy with the whole pool, and the entire design has been absolutely brilliant. So yeah, that's pretty much from me. So if there's anything specific, I can address that.
So, we have seen that this pool has gone on, or this combination of this aquatic facility has definitely attracted a lot of attention from many quarters, both within India, beyond India. This was also one of the first Khelo India facilities to be recognized by the government. Also, the competition that Ram had referenced was the Asian Age Group Championships, one of the biggest continental events in Asia, and was also an Olympic qualifying event. So, Nyasa, just to add your point on the tolerances, the tolerance is 50.028 to be precise on a laser meter. So, thank you, Nyasa, for your quick inputs on this, because there was a question on the chat about the ease of maintenance. So I think you've touched upon it. I don't know if you want to maybe add a few more points in terms of the fact that there are no tiles. You've been used to dealing with facilities in the past that have tiles, and so that's why, if you may want to add maybe a point or two on your experience of your observations on the maintenance part.
Yeah, so I mean, right through, if you're looking at the whole thing with the liner pool of this quality, in 50-meter pools, invariably the quality of the tiling and the grouting is not of a very high standard, and invariably between the first year of the pool, I have seen most 50-meter pools that you have tiles coming off, and then it's a huge problem getting it done. Either you have to drain the water, or you have to get somebody to go into the pool and then use Aquabond, and things like that. So we have never had any such problems, and it's very, very easy for us to vacuum. We not only use a suction sweeper, but we also use a robot, a pool robot, a very large one, and that's running pretty much the whole day. In terms of disinfection, and we barely need to maintain our water quality. We barely filter for about maximum about 6 to 7 hours in a day, and maintain absolutely end-to-end perfect clarity. And we have a pH of about 7.3 to 7.5, and we have chlorination of about 2 ppm, between 1.5 and 2 ppm. So we're really happy with the pool, and quite frankly, not only is this a world-class facility, it's being recognized all over the world. We had the Asian Age Group Championships, and everybody appreciated the pool and the whole setup, so it worked really well. Even though this is specifically a training venue as opposed to a competition arena, the way in which it was designed, the whole setup, it worked very well, and we could run one of the most successful Asian age group championships ever held. So I think that was really good for us. So not only was it good as a training facility, but it's also doubles as a world-class competition facility as well. Okay.
Thank you. Moving on to questions. We requested. There. If you have any questions, please put it up in the chat box. There was a question that came in a bit earlier. I would request Ram to probably first take it, and then also I would like to get Nyasa's perspective. When it comes to the tiling around the pool, what would there's always a concern around the quality of material or the suitable material to be used on the deck. So what have been your observations and learning, Ram, around the deck surfacing?
Yeah, so I think one is definitely, I'm specifically talking about the competition pool here.
Good quality tiles with good well-finished joints will work very well if the pool water is actually also maintained well. The problem is only when you see a problem with the decks tiles being a problem only when the water quality is not good. So if the point A is good, point B wouldn't be a problem. But what I've observed is also another thing, right? I mean, we also have deck gutters. Avoid MS at all costs. I mean, I know for sure that when you actually, because that's one of the last work that happens, and when cost comes into factor, where you are saying, oh, I'm close to hitting my limits, right? Because the deck gutters, typically people end up doing it with MS. It will go in for corrosion. It will start looking, the aesthetics of the pool will start going for a toss. In terms of surface finish, I don't see a problem with a tile, a wooden, engineered wood, which is actually deck wood flooring. Any of this will work well. I think it's just a matter of any of these issues is direct result of quality of water of the pool.
Ram, if I can just come in there.
Sure. Go ahead.
Yeah, so, this is something that Ram and I have spoken about quite a bit, because I am very particular. In fact, I think the design of the tile was changed at the very last minute, because it's, in my opinion, it's extremely very important that you choose the quality of the tile to be non-skid, because you have lots of little children or anybody just running on the pool decks, and they could potentially injure themselves very seriously. If you have a smooth tile and on top of that you add water, I mean, it's extremely dangerous, and it's an extremely dangerous surface if somebody is running or could slip and they could get very seriously injured. So you have got to look for a tile or a surface that is quite rough and non-skid. So I cannot stress that enough. And I think this is a discussion we had in the last minute, and I believe we changed our tiles. So when we brought up this subject, it's very important, and I feel very strongly about this. That's pretty much what I had to say on that. Yeah.
I see there's one more question on the same thing, whether artificial turf on the deck, is that recommended? Definitely not for competition pools. I've seen that in leisure pools happening. But a competition pool, I think it's got to do more with like what Nihar mentioned. It's all about practicality. It's about safety. It's about maintenance. The pool deck is invariably going to get wet. It needs to dry up fast. When we put up artificial turf on the side, the amount of water, again, the ability for it to dry up faster becomes very difficult.
If I can just add a little bit of my learning, through the years of my experience, I've noticed that a lot of there is a decent amount of focus from an aesthetic perspective on the decking, as compared to the functionality. So Ram, again, to just put it in context, I know it's a constant challenge that architects may face, finding the balance between aesthetics and functionality. And I know the deck is a very visible space, for people to engage with. So how do you find that, crucial balance?
No, I think that's where we started. I think one is very clearly differentiate that what we're talking here about is a competition pool. This is definitely not a leisure pool. The user segment and the intentions are very, very completely different. I mean, yes, aesthetics are important, but aesthetics doesn't necessarily mean that you do the same thing that you're doing in leisure pool back in a competition pool. That is definitely not aesthetics. Aesthetics can be simply well done work. I think the primary factor catering to a competition pool would be maintenance, safety, and then I would actually put up aesthetics. You don't compromise on the first two and then go directly to aesthetics. I would actually come up in that order: safety first, maintenance, and then the aesthetics.
I think that's an important point of attention. Thank you, Ram. A question that's just come in is also around the efficiency of heating an outdoor pool. So I know there are, again, two parts to it. There's one which Ram was mentioning about in his presentation on even at the design stage and in anticipation of how do you create the space both for piping and for the heat pumps, to come in, and creating the appropriate space for that. And then, I'm sure Nihasa can come in because the outdoor pool at this facility has recently been, also heated. So I'm sure Nihasa might have a few points to share on the need for it and the efficiency of it.
Yeah, I think if I have again got to put up an analogy, I mean, it's also about these guys are actually getting into a competition thing, right? The conditions have to be perfect. I won't look at the heating system with respect to cost perspective here, because the intention of this facility is to actually get up athletes who will actually go and represent India. And here I think heating system we invariably know is a must. I mean, it was just a matter of we actually did the indoor pool first, but we always knew that we're going to do the outdoor pool within a few months. I think that is like, for me, it's like, is having an AC in a car efficient? It's not about efficiency. I would say it is a must. It is a need. That is what actually is a significant part, which I don't think, which I stressed earlier in my talk, but it's a good question. In simple, it's a must for an athlete to get a perfect condition for training.
Yeah, so if I can just add to that.
Sure.
Yeah, so especially, if you're looking at to be using the pool all year round, from the end of November onwards to the end of February, Bangalore does get quite chill. And the water temperature drops below 20 degrees, especially where we are on the outskirts, closer to the airport. And also, I just want to remind you there are different requirements. So our main competition pool or the training pool, simply because athletes are going to be working out very hard and swimming fast all the time, we maintain the pool between 25 and 27 degrees centigrade year round. And the smaller indoor pool, which is used specifically for teaching small children and very, very young children and babies, that pool is maintained at 30 degrees. And for us to make it cost efficient, both pools are covered every night with a thermal cover. So that actually helps reduce our cost, so that we can make the pool financially viable for us. So if we didn't have the covers, our bills would go up drastically higher. But it is important to have a thermal cover on top of the pool all night long to retain the temperature, and that really helps the situation for us in both the pools. Like I said, the smaller pool, we keep it at 30 degrees because that's good for young children, for very small children who are around 5 years or under. And for those people who are training, between 25 to 27 degrees is more than adequate when they are working hard in the pool. So these are the temperatures that we keep our pool at, and that we cover the pools with a thermal cover every night. So that's what works for us.
There's another question that's come in the context of the water quality. So and the importance of the source water. So to just give some context, in this particular project, I know Myrtha, even though it was beyond its scope, we did pay a lot of attention to coordinate with the stakeholders to ensure the incoming water quality, because the water quality of the first fill does play a crucial role in supporting the subsequent maintenance. So I know that we had requested test reports of the water from multiple sources that were being considered to fill the water, and then based on what we felt was amongst the better choices, that was suggested to the client to go forward with. So because the source water is the first crucial starting point, and then of course the subsequent topping up. The next part that we often, again, when it comes to the water quality, often is understood more in the context of filtration. But there's the next crucial part, which is that goes beyond filtration is disinfection. And these two happen in the back end in the water treatment room. But then what happens subsequently, which integrates with the structure of the pool, is the circulation of the water. And often that is another crucial part that, so Myrtha, what Myrtha does at the design stage is Myrtha does, simulate using computational fluid dynamics to see the circulation, and based on that, the location of the inlets in the walls, the special wall inlets are located based on this simulation. And that's how, Myrtha does support in ensuring a more efficient distribution of water in the pool. With this, I would, like to extend an invitation to the participants who may not have visited this beautiful facility to definitely put it on your agenda. Let us know when you would like to visit. Our team at Myrtha Pools would be happy to arrange for a visit at your convenience. It is a facility that set the standards for high performance multi-sport facilities in the country, and it is a must visit. With this, I would really like to thank Ram for your time to participate in this webinar, and Neha sir as well. We really appreciate both of you taking out your time at this crucial juncture. We understand that, as things are opening up, you all are extremely busy. We wish everyone at the same time to stay safe. We have feedback forms. We would request your attention to please fill up the feedback forms. It just helps us continuously improve our communication and support to the community. So we request your attention to that. Thank you again to everyone who participated today, and we look forward to your continued participation as we move forward. Thank you, everybody.